bow, 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 bow. Grrr, bow, 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 bow. Welcome to yet another episode of the Born Free Network. We are the heirs of this democracy, and therefore, extremely important conversations need to be had. Now, without any further ado, I want us to jump straight into it. All right, so today, I actually want us to be exploring the link between women empowerment, feminism, and the destruction of families and the society as we know it. So I think it's very vital to recognize that family no longer exists. Well, at least not in the traditional sense that we have come to understand family. If you have a look at the evolution of the family unit, we used to have, it was commonplace for us to have a grandfather, grandmother, mother, father, aunts, uncles, siblings, and cousins as well. This meant that we were born into a community, that we understood the sense of responsibility to the tribe over and above our own selves. And then we transformed into what we today term the nuclear family. The nuclear family is basically just you, your mom, your dad, and your siblings. You started to refer to your cousins as extended family, and this was the start of the separation. Up until what we have today, what we term the single parent or no parent household, right? So that's a phenomenon whereby there is no biological parent present to raise the child. They're either just being raised by a relative or grandparents or even sometimes an adopted parent. But the most striking part of this is that 70% of Black children are the ones who seem to be affected by fatherlessness and parentlessness, rather. And this is according to a study that was done in the year 2018, done by Stats SA. So, guys, the reality is women empowerment should be working differently to what it's working, because women are the anchors of all families. So we would have expected that with the empowering of women, more and more families would have become empowered. But instead, what we have seen as a reality is that it's the opposite. More and more families are broken than has ever been in our history. And I think it's very important for us to start to investigate that with open eyes, right? So I've had a lot of research, of course, like I normally do, and I'm going to have charts and explanations that are put up there for you to understand. So I think it's important for us to investigate the roots of women empowerment. Let's investigate the true intentions of women empowerment, and let us judge women empowerment purely off of the fruits of its labor. Let us no longer listen to what people think. Let us no longer be wooed by the types of words that are used in the documentation. It's time for us to focus on the fruits of its labor. Right. So, first of all, just a quick disclaimer. I would hate for anyone to think that I'm giving a religious lecture, because I'm going to be using a lot of scriptural reference. Reason being, at a time like this, when there is a barrage of consistent misinformation, it's very important for us to rely on old age, timeless wisdom. Wisdom that can accurately predict the future and poignantly comment on the present. And that's why I'm choosing to use biblical scriptures, because they're older than you and I, they're older than YouTube, they're older than everyone that exists in this current civilization. And somehow they manage to be relevant to what's going on. Therefore, I want us guys to just start with some basic definitions that we're going to carry out throughout the whole video, that are going to help us to understand these concepts and the results thereof much better. All right. So as you know, guys, we are the heirs of this democracy, meaning extremely important conversations will be had. Let me share my first screen, right? What I'll be attempting to do here, guys, we're going to start with some definitions. We're going to use those definitions to help us understand the truth and the depth of the plans that have been launched against us. You understand? It's very, very important to understand what's going on, guys. I feel like feminism has been Trojan horsed, but it's actually just a form of Satanism, because by its actual fruits, if we study what it has done to families and societies at large, we will notice that it has resulted in more pain and instability as opposed to any other type of benefits. It far outweighs, the disadvantages far outweigh any of the advantages that women empowerment has brought forth. But understand, what I'm saying is I'm not advocating for women to be oppressed or whatever it is. I'm trying to show you how the use of language, the use of international, international globalist agendas coming into play. All right, guys. So first things first, let's get into it. What is Satanism? Because I feel like a lot of people will be confused as to why am I using Satanism as the basis with which I'm going to, what can I say? With the basis of which I'm going to analyze all of what's going on. Just let's read with me so that you can understand. Satanism is practices that are centered around Satan as a symbol of enlightenment, individualism, and egoism, a deliberate inversion of Christian rights, right? So I don't want you guys to dwell too much on the Christian or the religious aspect of it. I told you that this is old age wisdom, so we have to be able to understand it with an open mind. Remove all of what might potentially be a barrier to you, any religious, racial barrier. Remove that right now so that you may gain a full understanding of what we're speaking about. And you will see how these things link together. So as I start, I say, Satanism is a group of practices that are centered around enlightenment, individualism, and ethical egoism. So let's start there already. If you're building a family, do you require someone who is individualistic? Do you require someone who focuses on their egoism? Definitely not. To build a family is an act which supersedes your own desires. It's an act which requires sacrifice in and of itself in order for it to carry on. Hence why when I started it, I said it's very important for us to understand the evolution of families and how we've been separated generation by generation. But then when you look at it, this individualistic approach that we have to family building right now is actually one of the main pillars of Satanism as a belief. Individualism. Individualism makes you selfish. Individualism makes you trapped in your mind, thinking about your own particular life more than anything. So already you can see, by definition, how our current society is being affected by this doctrine. But now that you know what Satanism is, a deliberate inversion of Christian rights, it's enlightenment, individualism, and ethical egoism. Cool. Now we come to what feminism is per definition, right? Per definition, feminism is the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of equality of the sexes. Hold it right there. So enlightenment, as far back as we can go in the scriptures, involves the enemy being able to confuse you and convince you that whatever situation that you're living in, whatever laws exist to govern your existence, and whatever disciplines you have chosen for a better life, enlightenment can confuse that and turn it into an oppression. They can make a woman believe that having a place in the kitchen, being the one who takes care of the household, the one who's responsible for shaping the minds of children from an early age, enlightenment will come and convince you that you should be doing more than being here, taking care of your family and building this bloodline. They will convince you that you cooking for your children is a form of slavery and you need to free yourself from it. And I think that ties right into the pillar of Satanism as enlightenment, individualism, and egoism. So that's just the first link that we have developed. And we're going to see how, now that we have these definitions, we're going to see how legally they have implemented slightly these changes in society through the woman empowerment banner, but also every single thing that has been done legally to legalize women empowerment has been in direct contrast to the Bible. So take some time and let's go. I told you, get your coffee ready, get your blunt ready, get your notebook ready, whatever it is that you need in order to focus, get it ready, because today we're going to really go into some deep concepts to explore the link between women empowerment, Satanism, and the destruction of our families systematically. All right. So in the year 1979, let's just go here legally. In the year 1979, there was the official passing of the Divorce Act of 1979, and there was an amendment involved in it which said no fault divorce. Now, for any of you who don't know what no fault divorce is, it simply means that you no longer have to have a reason to leave your household. You no longer have to have a reason to desert your marriage. It no longer has to be any irreconcilable differences or anything of that matter. You just can wake up in the morning and decide that you're unhappy with the treatment and then walk out of the marriage. So that is exactly what no fault divorce is. But if you have a look at what does God have to say about divorce itself, then you come to realize that this act is in direct opposition to the word of God. Now, like I did say to you, I don't want you to misconstrue this as a religious teaching. This is a historical teaching, linking spiritual happenings with social happenings to give you an answer of why are we living in this type of a situation today. Right. So as I said, the Divorce Act of 1979, perhaps let's look at what the actual legislation says, or what do they actually advocate for in this legislation. So let me pull that up for you real quick. Boom. All right. So it says here that the Divorce Act was saying you don't need to have any fault. You don't need to find any fault with your spouse. You can just walk out and take half of their belongings on your way out. And this is in direct opposition to the biblical verse of Matthew 19, verse 16, when Jesus is addressing the Pharisees. So they ask him, is divorce allowed? And he says, they are no longer two, but one flesh. What God has joined together, let no one separate. Right. So since the advent of women empowerment, I don't know if you guys have seen the correlation between divorce rates and what's going on with women empowerment. Ever since women empowerment came into play, the divorce rates have been skyrocketing. This is because I think personally the incentives for marriage have been extremely skewed, right? There's no reason to stay married nowadays. It's almost as if the government incentivizes you leaving your marriage, right? By passing a law such as no fault divorce, you're basically saying that you can sign a contract right now, and then a month later you can decide you're not happy with anything that the contract said, and then you can walk out. So that means that your word between you and God saying that for better or for worse no longer means anything, and it no longer holds in the greater scheme of things, right? So that is one of the ways in which women empowerment is in direct opposition to what God directs us and the way in which he directs us to live. Like I was saying, I'm not trying to make this religious. What you need to observe is the Bible does serve as a history book. It's 3,000 years old. It's secrets that have been existing in this world. So we cannot disregard them simply because we feel like we are woke. And also another thing that I have come to find is that it would be idiotic of me to say that I don't consider the Holy Scriptures at all, considering the fact that there are wars being fought right now. People who believe that their territorial inheritances are being infringed upon. And where do they get that from? They get that from the Bible. So right now there are actual wars being fought to prove just how much the Bible actually matters, right? So with that being said, it will be kind of foolish for us to ignore the importance of the scriptures and things that have been written since time immemorial to predict the future. But let's continue to move. So in the Divorce Act, like I did say, that was saying you no longer need to find fault for you to divorce somebody. So it says in the Bible that the only reason you can divorce a woman is if she was sexually immoral. Any other reason does not qualify. But nowadays, you don't even need a reason to divorce. You just say, I am unhappy with the treatment. My rights as a woman may or may not have been infringed upon, but I just don't like this guy anymore. So that means that I'm out. So that type of termination of responsibility starts as far back as in the family, that individualism that I spoke about. Once you view yourself too individualistically and you view yourself as being not part of a chain or not part of anything else, but it's your own ego that exists to serve itself, that's when you start to realize that, oh, okay, this might actually be in line with the doctrines of Satanism. You don't even need to believe in Satan or Jesus or anything like that. But if there are people that are inverting the order of the world using those same writings, then it would be idiotic of you to not consider those things. Secondly, feminism says it is okay to terminate a pregnancy. And the laws that were passed here in South Africa, it was the Choice of Termination of Pregnancy Act in the year 1996. This is in direct opposition to what God commands Adam and Eve when he says, multiply, be plenty, and subdue the earth. When they tell you that, no, it's okay to kill a child before it's born, it's not a real human, that is in direct opposition to what God says when he says, I knew you before you formed in your mother's womb. So they're basically saying that, no, man, God ain't really serious about that. That's the same approach that was taken by the serpent in approaching Eve. When Eve was approached, the serpent said to her, is that God? Is that what God really said? Did he really say that you're going to die if you eat this fruit? So he planted a seed of doubt in their mind and made them believe that, no, you need this enlightenment so that you can step into uncharted territory. Once that happened, that's when the fall of man entered. So yet again, this choice that's presented as enlightenment is always deeply rooted in some occultic Satanist practice. Whether you believe it or not, don't worry. The time will come for that enlightenment to come to you as well. So as we're walking in this light, you need to understand. So when God says in Genesis 1, verse 28, that people need to, like, guys, I'm not going to quote these verses verbatim. I hope that this is some information that you in your time alone can sit and use and go and check up the scriptures and realize the depth of what I'm trying to present to you with this presentation. But every single advance legally of women empowerment has had its direct opposition in the Bible. So it makes you think, were they not actually advocating for these laws just for the sake of opposing what is in the Bible? I'm not advocating for anyone to change religions or anything. This is not even about religions. It's about the texts, the history books that are 3,000 years old. All right. So the next law that was passed, Civil Union Act of 2006. So this was the law that basically allowed for same-sex marriage to occur in South Africa. Something which was actually in direct opposition to what God was commanding in Leviticus 18, verse 22, when he said that you cannot have sexual relations man to man in the same way that you do with a woman. You know what the whole commandment was. But they went to Parliament, they lobbied, and they made sure that the Civil Union Act passed, just to be in direct contrast to what Leviticus 18, verse 22 is saying, right? So that is paramount to understand, because we're developing a link between the Trojan horse known as feminism, woman empowerment, and its actual fruits, which are Satanism and the destruction of the society as we know it. There is no way, two ways about this. There's no two ways about this. Don't worry, we cooking. Decriminalization of pornography in the year 1996. So when South Africa passed the constitutional court said, okay, no, pornography is no longer illegal in South Africa. That's when you saw a rise in people feeling like, okay, it's fine. We can actually do pornography even on our own. Today, we see a pornographic society where every single one of our little girls wants to be an Onlyfans model. And this all stems from the decriminalization of pornography in 1996. If pornography was not decriminalized in 1996, how many of our sisters do you think would have an OnlyFans account? They wouldn't, strictly because it would be illegal and against the state. But because the states that we live in is so captured and subverted by the Satanist agenda, this is why you see so many of the laws that they pass, they seem to be in line with the Satanist agenda. And like I'm saying, I am not advocating to say this is not a religious lecture. at all. This is just me recognizing a pattern in this society that whenever there's a law and advancement in a certain department, specifically women empowerment, we see that it has its roots in defying the actual writings and the actual scriptures. Decriminalization of pornography in 1996, that is what resulted in what we see today, where every second girl that you run into has an OnlyFans account. Didn't God expressly command against lust? Did he not say that if you lust after a woman, you have basically committed adultery already? So this law alone has launched billions of men into sin by allowing the advertising or the sexualizing of the female body in order to create lust. You scroll your Instagram, you scroll your TikTok, your Twitter, all you see is naked women, and the algorithms seem to push these women into our eyes. These are the most popular people with the most followers, the people who get the most likes and interactions on their posts. And these are people who are basically promoting soft pornography on the timeline. And you always wonder, okay, why is my Instagram Explore page always riddled with half-naked women? This is because deep down in the algorithms of these social media platforms, they have the understanding that pornography is decriminalized in South Africa. And with women empowerment doing its thing, this is all going to contribute towards the weakening of the man, weakening of the society, weakening of the ability to even resist. Very, very important stuff to note. The next legal change that occurred was the Employment Equity Act of 1998. Very, very benevolent in wording, right? But by the fruit of its labor, it resulted in a lot of males losing their jobs, a lot of males being, shall I say, avoided or sidelined for duties that they were actually qualified for, but just because they had to fulfill the employment equity quotas, they had to choose someone else. Now, the deeper understanding here is, guys, women are the backbone of a family, because if you don't have a good woman, there's no one to nurture the children. If you don't have a good woman, there's no one to cook healthy, nutritious food that will give you strength to take on the world. If you don't have a woman that is teaching your children the morals and teaching your children about God, what you have is adults who are godless, who are violent, who are angry. And therefore, by definition, the woman is the backbone of the family. So when they take the woman out of the family and use benevolent language like economic empowerment to separate you from your own seed and ensure that you are somewhere else respecting the rules and laws of another man for half of the day, that is them basically ensuring that you have no time to teach your own children. And then you are going to outsource the teaching of your children morality, God, and even the history of this world. You're going to outsource that teaching to the education system. The education system is actually under the control of the same group of international Satanists that we speak about right now. So when the woman is taken out of the family unit and told that they have to be economically active and empowered to do some other thing that does not include taking care of their own child and raising their family, that's when you see the type of society that we have now. Children that are drug addicts, adults that are still children inside the body, crying for the love of their parents. And the only way that they're expressing that is on the sidelines, on the streets, smoking drugs, being destructive to themselves and to people around them. So removing the woman from the household was actually the main aim of women empowerment, because women, being the special people that they are, they teach love, they teach compassion, they teach God and morals to children. They are the ones who cook the nutritious meals that give you strength to go out there and take on the world. If something were to go wrong, you come back, and the woman is supposed to comfort you. But nowadays, your woman is not going to comfort you. She has her boss. She spends more time respecting the rules and laws of another man than she does being in her own home, respecting her husband and building her own home. Now, of course, understandably, this is information which does not land well, especially to the normal modern woman who is economically empowered and feels she basically doesn't need a man. But if women are so empowered, then why are families so torn apart? Because women are the backbones of these families. It's time for us to actually observe the fruits of these acts, these movements, and all of these seemingly good things that are presented to us. It's time for us to see what results have they actually yielded in society. Why is the rate of violent crime, homicide, and even sexual crimes against women rising? Shouldn't it be that since the women are empowered in this society, the society should be safer? But because women have been stripped of their main power through this empowerment, their main power of actually rearing children, building families, building legacies, protecting bloodlines, this is how we find that our own society is being destroyed. How many people do you know without a father? How many people do you know with the father, but no relationship with the father because of economic difficulties or maybe even misunderstandings between the two families and they don't have a home together? Right now, home ownership for South Africans 35 and under is at an all-time low. First-time home buyer age has now increased to 37 years of age. It previously used to be 33 years of age. And even before that, 4 years ago, it was 33 years of age. But before that, it used to be even lower. So what this is proving is that people are taking an even longer time to start families. And even when they do start those families, they don't last because divorce rates are extremely high. And if you are now able to join the dots and see and recognize patterns, you will then be able to squarely place the blame on women empowerment. Because the way that these words were used seemed like women were going to benefit more, but women are more stressed than they've ever been. They are more using drugs than they're using more drugs than they've ever used before. Their suicide rates are even higher than they've ever been before. So this shows that generally there is a greater dissatisfaction amongst women. Sorry, guys, I told you I'm an important person, so people are always calling me. Bio. Anyway, sorry about that. Coming straight back into it. For now, what we're looking at the laws. We're looking at the laws which have created the society that we live in right now. So as I have named the Divorce Act, I have named the Termination of Pregnancy Act, the Civil Union Act, Decriminalization of Pornography Act, the Employment Equity Act, and the Abolition of Corporal Punishment Act. Now, if you want to understand how all of these things work together to create the society that we have today, then I think it's as simple as opening your eyes, because this link that I'm trying to develop between Satanism, feminism, and the destruction of our families is becoming quite apparent if you open your mind up to the truth. All right. So, Abolition of Corporal Punishment Act. That means that you are no longer allowed to enforce discipline to your child. Again, this leads right back to the principles of Satanism, which involves individualism and enlightenment. Anything that you view as discipline or the law, this doctrine will teach you that it is oppressive and it is something that you need to let go of. This is the same law trying to convince people in other countries that, listen, you are oppressed by wearing a hijab and protecting yourself as a woman. You shouldn't be wearing a hijab. You should be showing more of your skin so that more men can lust for you and you can be at a greater risk of sexual violence. If you actually observe how deeply evil that is, you come to a woman who is covering her body, you tell her, no, you are oppressed as you're covering your body. It is time for you to show more of your face so that men can lust after you more. One, that's creating more sin in the direction of lust. You know that God does not approve of that. But now you are increasing her exposure to sexual violence by saying, no, you need to show more of your skin. We need to stop acting and we need to start looking at the true fruits of these acts. We need to start seeing what they actually stand for by observing the fruits that they have produced in our society. We have a society where There are no parents in homes. Single or no parent households have become more common than ever. 70% of Black children do not live with their father. That lack of structure, that lack of discipline is why we see a dysfunctional society as the one that we have today. It is our Black sisters and daughters and cousins who are more exposed to prostitution, digital prostitution, strictly because there are no fathers in households. There is no discipline. There is no sense of shame. There is no connection to the tribe, no sense of self that is greater than your own selfish needs and wants and desires. Even this rise in mental health issues is because people are too much in their brain thinking and pondering about what's the meaning of their life, instead of being part of a tribe and understanding that life goes on and you are just a part of life. But you thinking that you are the beginning and end of life and things happen to you and not just the world is the beginning of what I call these mental issues. So it's very, very important to understand the doctrines of what I call Satanism. When you are encouraged to individualism, encouraged to egoism, encouraged to anything that makes you selfish, just know and underline that that is the beginning of the Satanist doctrine. So when the Bible says, if you spare the child the rod, you're basically spoiling them. And then your government says, nah, you need to stop beating on children. Let's pass a law, Abolition of Corporal Punishment Act. Do you not see that your government is in direct opposition to any and all of the teachings that come from the Holy Book? And if it was such an irrelevant and unimportant piece of writing, then why is so much of the world conflict right now based on biblical borders, based on biblical prophecies? We need to start thinking in that direction, because I understand these people have been so effective in removing the supernatural aspects of every person. Everyone seems to believe that, no, I'm just here, I'm going to do what I got to do. I'm going to indulge my flesh and then I'm going to die. But that seems to not be the truth. Their focus on trying to make you believe that should actually show you that there's a greater meaning behind what we're doing. And in any case, if you don't want to spiritualize it, I just want to say, look at the history book. If the history book has told you that this is how we're living, then why don't we follow that for the maintenance of civilization? Why do we want to do something that is in direct opposition to what maintains or promotes civilization? If I say to you, all right, Civil Union Act, people of the same sex can now get married, I am actually directly opposing God's command to reproduce in the earth. And if you've watched the other videos that I've posted and what I've spoken about eugenics, then you'll understand why all of these acts are in line with the eugenics agenda, and why eugenicism or eugenics itself is in line with the Satanist doctrine. Now understand, guys, I am not a religious cat. I'm not the one that you're going to see praying and doing all of those things and fasting and whatever. No, that's not my forte. That's not who I am. However, I am a reader of history. And in the Bible, it does say that there was a time when people were so sex crazed that God thought it was time to bring upon a flood. He brought that flood. He kept only 5 people alive, Noah and his children, to reproduce. And now that we are at that same stage again, where sexual deviance and the disrespect of God has become mainstream again, we need to start looking at what history books say about situations like this. We cannot completely disregard what history says about situations like this, right? So, basically, what I was trying to show you with this small little timeline is that there are forces working hand in hand. Satanic forces that are Trojan horsed as something else which is benevolent. So for those of you guys who don't know what a Trojan horse is, I'll give you a bit of a breakdown on what a Trojan horse is. So there were 2 kingdoms that were at war, Kingdom of Troy and the Kingdom of Greece, all right? So these 2 kingdoms One was bigger, one was smaller. The bigger one was Greece, and they were struggling to penetrate Troy. Do you understand what I'm saying? So Troy had fortified its walls, and all of the people at Troy were of one mind, and they knew that the Greek were an enemy. So the Greek, being sly, decided that they would devise a plan to break through those walls without using military force. And how they did that was they decided to gift the people of Troy with something called a Trojan horse. All right. So that Trojan horse was a big wooden horse. It looked like a great gift on the surface level. It looked like it was a peace-making attempt, extension of an olive branch. But as soon as that horse was allowed to enter into the kingdom of Troy, that same horse opened its belly up, and a flood of Greek soldiers escaped from the horse, and they began to murder women, children, and soldiers of Troy, and they brought the whole city to destruction. So a Trojan horse is something evil, but is masked as something which is beneficial or good for you. That brings me to what I'm trying to say about women empowerment. If we look at women empowerment, it looks great. The ideas, the laws around it, they look to be very empowering. But if you look at the fruits of women empowerment today as we know it, we come to realize that women are more unhappy than they've ever been. They are now using antidepressants more than they ever have, and they are more prone to suicide and even homicide and violence in general than they've ever been. So this destruction of families is not only affecting the families themselves, but it's affecting the society at large, because the people that we are creating monsters that are filled with anger. Some of the most harsh and hardened criminals that you can ever speak to, if you find out what is their motivation behind the way that they act, that's when you will come to understand that this person lacked the guidance of a father or the love of a mother. And that made them animalistic at their core. Once people are that animalistic, there's no trust, there's no bond. That person is incapable of creating real bonds with any other people, meaning that they can always be used as an agent to destroy themselves or even other people. I don't know if that's making sense to you, but people who are angry at their own parents, who lack the guidance of a father or the love of a mother, are the ones who are always most susceptible to anger and are used to do extremely, extremely disgusting things. And taking this back into the Garden of Eden, at the first time that the serpent approached Eve, he didn't say directly that you need to disobey the orders of your creator. That's not what the serpent said. The serpent seemingly asked a harmless question, saying, did the creator really say you're going to die if you eat this fruit? Or is he afraid that you're going to gain certain intelligence that's going to put you on par with him? Right? That's how the question was phrased to her. And in that moment of confusion, she then took a bite out of that fruit. And that's how that Trojan horse of sin entered the garden. That same playbook is still being used till this day. For example, in America, there is a gay couple who just adopted a child. Now, this gay couple, one of the men there was a registered sex offender. And one of the laws that were passed there allowed him to actually adopt a child. It was a loophole. How can you be allowed to adopt a child when you're a registered sex offender? It was apparently a Trojan horse law when it was passed in Congress or wherever it was passed. But when the actual fruits of it came to the front, we started to see that evil intention birthed it. Now we need to all observe. We need to observe more and think deeply about the laws and the initiatives that are pushed upon us. Everything that sounds good, the use of language, weaponizing it to take something which is actually bad and turn it good, and take something that's good and turn it bad. Like for them to say to you that you're xenophobic instead of patriotic, and then for them to say to you, you have the right to reproduction instead of saying that you're killing a child. That type of manipulation of language is an attack on your brain for you to not be able to see exactly what is being said or done in that moment. So I hope that with this little timeline and these little laws that I've outlined for you, because I don't actually want to go too deep into it, I just actually wanted to show you that every single law in the power of women empowerment or in support of women empowerment actually has its biblical equivalent that it is meant to defy. And thank you very much for joining the Born Free Network stream today. I really enjoyed being with you. Please make sure that you watch this video again to really understand what we were speaking about. It's one of our shorter videos, but I believe that you're going to gain a lot of value if you rewatch this video and really understand it. Please make sure that you like this video, subscribe to this channel. Do ensure that you turn the notifications on as well, because we are discussing extremely relevant and sensitive information for that matter. So I am your host, your boy Flex Rabaizi. Thank you very much for joining us on yet another stream of the Born Free Network. We are the heirs of this democracy, and therefore extremely important conversations need to be had. And up until next time, God bless and protect you. Thank you.